business, leadership is so, so important. And we use DISC as a profiling tool. It's a well-known profiling tool, and it's probably the one we found actually matches us the best. And we use that to look at what our leadership styles are, and also as both us and the team, so everybody understands people's different personality traits. Just because I'm an extrovert and I'm out there going, come on, everyone, we're going this way, it doesn't mean that everybody will follow me if I go in that.
Yo, this is Christian D. Evans with Journey with Christian D. Evans podcast. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in and listening to our amazing podcast. This is where we reveal the top 1% of business concepts and systems and processes to scale 8 and 9 figure businesses. We interview top level 8 and 9 figure CEOs, business owners, and amazing TEDx speakers like David Meltzer. We got Nick Cavuto, Pascal Bachman, and so many others. And if you feel like this resonates with you, please share this with your friend, your family, and make sure you impact them as well, because we're trying to spread the message on those that do not know how to scale 8, 9 figure businesses and talking higher level business concepts. So guys, remember, enjoy the episode and be uncommon if you can. Cheers. Thank you so much for tuning into Journey with Christian D. Evans podcast. I'm your host, Christian D. Evans. No waffle, no bullshit, no smokescreen. Our next guest is going to unveil and reveal that stuff that's going on in the sales industry. He is a co-founder of several companies, I+ Sales and Marketing, Instant Insight, Business Accounting, and so many more. He has produced hundreds upon hundreds of millions of dollars for his clients, helping them really unveil and reveal those smoke screens that most people are struggling with in the sales side of things, but much more in business and in life. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my next guest, the co-founder, wonderful Phil Coley. How are you doing today, Phil?
Hey, Christian, great. And really great to be on the show with you today.
Hey, me too. I'm really excited about it because you've been able to produce incredible results in your life and your career, and you've been able to produce several different companies underneath one large mother company. However, though, before we dive into this, I really love what you said here at the beginning of our podcast, before we jumped on. You believe there is a paradigm of, the waffle, which is what you call no BS, the smoke screen that's kind of covering up sales. If you could unpack that for us and kind of what you're seeing in the industry and what you mean by that.
Yeah, sure. No, more than happy to do it. I mean, for me, sort of 35 years in sales now, and I fell into sales after finishing education in the UK. I fell into sales going, I probably need to get a job because I wasn't ready to go to university. And I sort of fell into sales, and I sort of finished school on the Friday and I got a job on the Monday. And that was just selling sort of newspaper advertising at that stage. And I knew nothing about sales. I probably knew that I could talk a bit. I could stand up on stage, and I suppose I was like, do you know what? I can talk a bit. And for me, I fell into sales. But my bit now is that whole no BS stuff is, I think right now people are making a big meal out of sales, and they're trying to reinvent the wheel, and they say there's this method and that method. And I'm like, come on, that's just, it's rubbish. I'm like, the only thing that's changed in sales today is there are many more platforms to promote on. That's all that's changed. The sales process, and the sales process of attracting someone, getting some traffic, and then converting them, that hasn't changed. Just the platforms have. And I think too many people are creating these smoke screens, and they're trying to say, oh, you should do this, and you should be only on this platform. It's that kind of rubbish that I think is just wrong at the moment. And people are becoming confused, and they're spending a lot of money in places they don't need to be.
Well, it's actually very interesting you mentioned this, because they're always trying to find the new and the creative, right? That shiny object, right? Whatever that vehicle is.
Yep.
And if you could maybe walk through this, walk a little bit further, like what are some hurdles? What are certain things that people should be aware of that you think are smoke screens?
Okay, I mean, I think for me, digital marketing. Okay, digital marketing is here, and obviously the biggest spend in the world is on digital marketing. And don't get me wrong, you need to be doing digital marketing. But it's a lot of people in that digital marketing space are forgetting the traditional elements of sales. They're forgetting some of the tried and tested ways of getting to somebody and speaking to somebody. They're just saying, oh, you've got to spend all your money on digital marketing. And so for me, we as a company 18 months ago, we ditched our telemarketing as an offering, and we dived into LinkedIn messaging, not LinkedIn content, but LinkedIn messaging. And the reason I did that is because I've been in that direct sales and that telemarketing arena, for 30 odd years. And all we've done is take the same principle and use it in a different platform because we know it works. And I think that's where people are getting it wrong. They're going into digital marketing, but they're forgetting you can still use those traditional things. So to walk you and your listeners through it is, from a LinkedIn perspective, is the telemarketing side. It was harder and harder, particularly in COVID, to get through to a decision maker. Telephone systems changed. You couldn't get through to people. It was just a real nightmare. And it was like, actually, your decision makers are on LinkedIn. And some of them are active, some of them are not. Now, doing fancy posts on LinkedIn, wow, great. Let's get an award for doing that. But it doesn't get you the conversation with the decision maker. So for me, it was like, reach out to the person, don't sell to them, which is bizarre for a salesperson to say. Don't sell to them, build the relationship. And I know you, Christian, you're big on building the relationships and building your network. And that's the principle I still look at, is look at the platforms, but how can you build a meaningful relationship, particularly in a B2B setting, to get the sales? And that's where I take that philosophy and I use it. I reach out, and we reach out for all of our clients using LinkedIn with meaningful conversations that ultimately move into building a network, which may lead to a sale. I mean, hey, you and I reached out to each other on LinkedIn through a message, not through me liking a post or going, I'd love to be on your show. We just had a conversation, like a message, and now, hey, we're talking. So that's a good example from me.
And it's really interesting you mentioned that, because one of the things I found is that that reveals a lot of the crap, like you said, out there in the industry right now. And it actually allows us to say, oh, okay, that's good. I don't need to listen to all that. I don't need that to really succeed. It's just as long as we stick to the baseline. So let's walk in and help our listeners walk through what is that foundation that at the end of the day, this is what we really need. Like you said, building the relationships.
Yeah, for me, I mean, people buy from people. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. It's the same thing. People buy from people. And I'm a massive believer in that. So when I start out on that journey, I've got 2 or 3 models that I use in the sales side. And I suppose my simplest model is ATC, air traffic control. And I turn that into attract, traffic, and convert. Keep it really, really simple. And so that attraction is actually identifying, who your prospects are. Don't worry that people unsubscribe from your emails, because actually they're probably not your prospects. They're probably people that are never going to buy from you. And I think too many people get embroiled in list building and they just hold on to the list. I'm like, get a list, mail the list, get the unsubscribes out of the way. Then you're dealing with a meaningful list of people who are your prospects. Then you start to need to look at, okay, anybody going to buy something? It's about a solution. People, yes, some people buy a few luxury items, but most things are, you're buying something because you need it to solve a solution. It might be a time solution, so it gives you more time. It might be efficiencies, it might be profitability, but it's solving a solution. And again, that's never changed. It really has never changed. So for me, it's be really clear on that, as well as you walk through that going from your list to your product. And then it's look at the promotion. And I think that's where I spoke about the digital marketing bit. Everyone's just gone stupid on where they think they should promote. There's some B2B companies are saying, oh, TikTok's the big thing, let's get on TikTok. And I'm like, are you joking? Why are you going to do that? You look stupid. It just doesn't work. So choose your channel wisely, but also think about where you're going to add the value in terms of that, and then market to those key people. Because if you spread yourself too thinly, then nothing's ever going to stick, because you don't stay with a clear strategy.
Let me ask you this regarding like B2B, B2C, because what I've noticed is like some of those sales, cycles or sales like conversations are slightly different, right? B2B, the sales cycle is a little longer. However, though, at the end of the day, it's still relationships and it's also emotional based, right? Yeah. What have you found? Because obviously you went from direct D2C to B2B to B2C. So you've been in all those industries. And so if you could maybe like unpack like each kind of niche and what is different and what do you have to adjust according to that category.
The one thing that I will say that makes me smile, but it's common across everything, is suddenly the new in thing, which just makes me laugh every single day. The new in thing is personal brand. And I'm like, right, so that's a new thing, is it? Personal brand is new, is it? And so I look at some of the big brands and I go, personal brand has been around for years. You know, you look in the States, you know, McDonald's, you know, everyone knows the story there. That's a personal brand. You know, it's suddenly why is personal brand the big in thing? So B2B or B2C, I still strongly believe in personal brand, because the personal brand about, you know, the team or the person, the owners, the directors, you know, the executives within that business, you are responsible for your personal brand, because it is about, you know, it's about that like and that trust with people. You know, it's about being the expert or the authority. And that to me is the number one across B2C and B2B, is make sure you represent your personal brand. And it's not a new thing, it really isn't. But, you know, people, as I keep saying, people buy from people. But to answer your question properly, if you look at B2C, then the journey on B2C needs to be really, really clear. And it needs to be focused on two things for me. And I talk about this a lot in my 7 steps model, is when you look at the user experience or the customer experience, to me, they're two different things. So when you're selling B2C predominantly, then your internal user experience of your people and technology, i.e. the people who are processing the sales, doing the sales, it needs to be streamlined to work for the people and the technology internally. And you need to be really, really clear on that. And then externally, it's the same two things, but it's about the customer experience of the people, i.e. the customer, and the technology you're using. And at the moment, what I see are too many people are buying in the technology for the customer experience and then forgetting the user experience internally, which means your customer service is really poor. And therefore you're putting barriers up for a sale to commence. And actually, even today, you're still getting the user experience. So i.e. the internal technology is trying to drive the customer, and it can't. And a good example of that is the growth in accounting packages. So SaaS packages in terms of accounting, and there's lots of big players in that accounting world, is that about the customer or the user internally? And there's always a barrier there. So from that B to C setting, I just see you're setting yourself up to fail if you don't understand your internal user experience to help process the sale and your external processes for the customer journey. And that's really prevalent in that B2C space. The B2B is the really interesting one. I see a huge gulf right now in B2B around the world. I see this with clients around the world, is older markets such as engineering and manufacturing. There's a huge gulf in their sales process and their sales messaging. And they've been really slow adopters to new technology. So they've been really slow to look at digital ads in terms of, say, Google ads, SEO particularly. It's like, well, we're engineers, we've always done it this way. Whereas the sort of front end side of technology businesses, proper technology businesses, as you would expect, they're either right at the sort of cutting edge, or they've gone over the other side of what I call the bleeding edge, and they're just sort of testing stuff, and it's not quite right, but they're right at the other end of the engineering one. So the B2B space, I think we will see a massive change in the next 5 to 10 years, because the age of people in the older sectors is changing, but there's also not necessarily too many people coming in at the lower end. So what I see in technical industries is that skill level of salespeople coming in with knowledge is getting less and less. And you're finding the older salespeople are actually going, but nobody's coming in to replace them or take the knowledge with them. And I think from a B2B setting, you should still be using traditional methods, but you've got to put some kind of mechanism in place for the next stage on. And I genuinely believe that those older fashioned business sectors they're suddenly going to dry up, because they'll get some competitors coming in with proper processes, and they'll go, how did that happen? And they'll get overtaken really quickly. And I am seeing that now. And I saw that in 2020 going into 2021 in that aviation sector. And obviously that was hit hard, really hard with COVID around the world. And you actually saw some of the companies were clever enough to go, when we come out the other side, we've got to market really, really hard. You know, it's the same as in a recession. You've got to be marketing in a recession, not marketing after a recession.
Wow, that's actually really good insight. So let me ask you, so what you're saying there, definitely in the B2C world, is you got to think of marketing, sales, as well as customer experience as a holistic approach. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
And then as well as the B2B, there are certain industries that are obviously kind of behind, lagging with what's going on in today's digital age. And why do you think they're having a hard time pivoting very quickly to kind of what's happening? And why do you think they're lagging? Is just because the leadership is just because they don't know exactly how to leverage their offer in this digital age?
I think it's three things. I think the one thing I'm seeing from a time lag perspective is website design. And that people might go, what are you talking about website design for in sales? The reason I'm talking about website design is if you go back 10 years ago, websites were seen as these huge things you've got to invest a lot of money into. And today you still, of course, you need to invest money in it. But a lot of people got burnt with websites 10 years ago. They spent a lot of money. They went, oh, it's this. And then they suddenly were handcuffed by their web designers going, oh, you want to make a change. It's going to cost you a few $100s just to change a word. And it's like, wow. So some of the older generation of business leaders were like, we don't want to go into this digital marketing age because it's going to cost us a lot of money. And is it actually proven? And for me, that's one of the lags. The next one on as well is similar to that sort of web strategy right now. And you'll really relate to this, Christian, is, 5 years ago, if you looked at a job board 5 years ago to look into a job board today, the amount of social media type interns or social media jobs or whatever they are, there's so many now because the industry's changed. And I'm not against the young generation. We've got some amazing younger staff in our business, but sometimes you don't have the business acumen to be able to translate what digital marketing really means to an experienced business leader. And they need some convincing in that's the right move for us. So I think quite a few business leaders are going, we need to do something, but we're not sure what it is. And the people we're listening to, we haven't got that trust in them because it's taken us down a route they don't always give. So it's a real challenge now in that kind of divide in the sort of 20 somethings versus the 30 somethings versus the 40 and the 50, even the 60-year-olds now. There's this kind of divide which is happening in B2B because people, there's more stickability. So for me, there's got to be that education process. And I'm all for young up and coming businesses, and I'm all for youngsters coming in and making a great thing. And actually some of our clients are young entrepreneurs, and I think that's amazing. But in some sectors, you've got to get the balance right between the younger and the more mature experience as well that's there.
Now, let me ask you this as well with the B2B to B2C. So I know like B2C, because it's more of an emotional sale, sometimes you can collapse that sales cycle. However, what I found also is sometimes because we think B2B is, oh, it's got to be professional, that we sometimes elongate that sales cycle when the reality is maybe they really don't need all that information. A lot of times it becomes more of like, oh, technical features, all that stuff. And the reality is, what do the C-level or the C-suite, what do they really truly want? What do they desire? And saying, hey, we can perform it. And that's how to collapse the time frame. I just basically saying, hey, at the end of the day, they're very both emotional sales cycles. And I just wanted to kind of get your perspective on that because I've seen that a lot of times. Because we're talking B2B, we just almost expect it takes us 45 days to close this person. And that's fine. But also sometimes I think that's like a limiting belief that holds them back from saying, hey, well, what if you just expect to close them on the first time? So I'd love to get your just response on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I mean, emotional decisions, absolutely. But also we can't forget there's transactional sales, and if somebody wants to, in a B2B setting, or a B2C setting, if somebody wants to buy some hydraulic oil, they want to buy some hydraulic oil that does the job. They don't care about the bells and the whistles. They just go, that's what I want. And we have to think about, and you saying about collapsing the sales cycle, is the changes in the Google algorithm over the last 18 months. Google now is about that one-click answer that people want. So you need to be thinking about your sales strategy about that one-click answer. So if you want hydraulic oil for a combine harvester that happens to be a New Holland, you're going to go, that's what you put in. So when the answers come up on page one, and people are more savvy to page one and the ads, of course they are, but you just want, when I click on that link, I want it to take me to a web page that tells me this is hydraulic oil for a New Holland combine harvester. That's what you want. So you can collapse that sales cycle in B2C or B2B. And even in the solution sales, and I talk about this a lot to people, is the one thing I remember from my really early days in sales, and it's, you know, it's common when in sales and people use it all the time. It's just always be closing, A, B, C, always be closing. So ask the person fairly early on, is this what you want? And if you ask them that, they're going to give you probably a closed question of either a yes or a no, or you just ask them that classic phrase, you know, how does that sound to you? And it doesn't matter if you're saying, how does that sound to you, face to face, on the telephone, or in your web content, or your messaging, or your email. You know, here you go, this is it. How does that sound to you? Because their objections, they'll either answer in the head going, yeah, that sounds all right. Oh, fine, let's click and buy it. Or they're on the phone going, well, yeah, what about this? And then you get into the objection handling. I think far too many people are scared to ask for the sale or to close it because they're really scared of hearing no. And if they knew how to answer the question better and actually have all of the different things in place, doesn't matter if it's technology or human being, you'd actually find you increase your sales conversions.
Well, and you bring up a really good point because, see, in today's culture, we'll always talk about quote unquote adding value, right? Hashtag add value, add value. And don't get me wrong, that is still very needed. And I get where they're coming from because obviously at the end of the day, though, you have to ask for the sale, right? Because you could add value, you could coach them. That was amazing. I felt the amazing synergy. But at the end of the day, hey, Phil, do you want to work with me? Do you want help implementing what I just told you? Wonderful. That's where I can come in. But so many times I see that like that lag because quote unquote, we just want to add value. I don't want to come off of quote unquote salesy. Is that kind of what you're seeing as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, I talk about my 120 rule, and lots of people go, what's that? So in my early days in sales, when I was selling advertising, that's a tough old game. And I was selling in the days where we didn't have computers, you know, so we had telephone directories, and you pick up the directory and you got a phone. And so I'm either walking the streets or walking industrial estates or industrial parks, or I'm on the telephone and I've got a book in front of me and I'm just flicking through it, picking up the phone, making calls. So the 120 rule for me then was, my target was to make 100 cold calls a day. So for me, I had my own rule, which is the 120 rule. So I make it 120. And those extra 20 calls a day was a 20% increase in what I should have been doing. I found my sales closing rate was 50% up by doing 20% more. And the reason that I relate that to your question now is I was never afraid to ask for the sale, because if I got a no, I knew there's another call I'm going to make. And too many people today are worried about the no because they're going, oh, where am I going to find the next lead from? It's like, that's the least of your worries. You need to get through asking, do you want this? Yes or no? And maybe ask it in a slightly softer way, but actually just to ask the question. And that's why my 120 rule is, you know that once you get to 100, if you've had 100 no's, there's a high percentage you're going to get a yes in the next 20 calls. And that's the mentality I talk about right at the beginning about no bullshit. It's like, sales is a numbers game. Nobody will ever convince me it's not. And it is. And it always has been and always will be a numbers game.
Yeah, like you said, there's certain basic truths no matter what, and you will not ever be able to fight against those truths, which is really, really awesome. Now, you do mention something which I really want to talk about, the simple principles. Okay, this is how you're able to take a lot of solopreneurs to multi-million-dollar, business owners, enterprises, and really helping them scale to that next level. And it's sales, information, money, people, leadership, and energy. And I'd love for you to dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you a little story to start on that. And this will make you smile. So my business partner, Mark, and we're 50-50 in our business. Really amazing. He's an accountant. I'm the face of the business because he's an accountant. We keep him in a locked room counting beans. But in terms of that, the story we have is, and we relate to it now, he came into my business life when the business was doing all right. And salesperson, I'm out there selling, bringing the money in. And his philosophy is never let a salesperson run a business, because a salesperson goes after shiny things. A salesperson does a sale, they look at the sale, they know what they build, and they go, oh, that's all my money. And salespeople forget all the other things. You've got to pay marketing bills, you've got to pay your staff, you forget that. So he and I have this huge laugh, and he made such a difference to the business, and hence why we're now business partners. But he and I worked on a model that, okay, if a salesperson can't be leading a company, what are the traits of growing a company? What are the things you need to look at? And so he and I sat down and we went through, right, what are the things you need? So we came up with the acronym, which is simple. And we said, these are the 6 key pillars you need to grow your business. So this is growing your business. So this isn't just you on your own. This is you going, right, I'm going to employ somebody, or I'm going to have 4 people. I'm going to have 40 people. I'm going to have 200 people. Wherever you are in that one, you're growing your business. What do you need to have? So obviously sales is one of the most important things. You know, the sales is very much the oxygen that keeps the business going. And so you need the sales, but it's not the only thing you need. So from sales, we had to look at, right, if you're looking at sales, what kind of sales do you need? You know, what's your profitability on the sales? What do they look like? And then to be able to grow your business, then you need the right information. And that's a real key challenge today. Again, is there's actually too much information. And so we work on company dashboards. So we work on a company dashboard that is telling us, and again, we relate it slightly to an aircraft, is when you're flying a plane, you've got lots of instruments in front of you, and they all play a really important part. And our dashboards are the same as an aircraft instrument sort of process there. So we look at your altitude, and you look at, you know, what are you going to do? What's your fuel levels? And that's where the information comes in. So whatever information we can get is to help us to fly the plane steadily in an upward direction. And that's why information is hugely important. So I strongly urge, and we work with all of our clients, that they've got a strong company dashboard that they can measure and improve using the dashboard, but they understand every single instrument and what it means, because sometimes people have got too many instruments. And then you move to money. And of course, you know, money makes the world go round, and we need money, but it's not about the need for money. It's about how you use the money to grow your business. And Mark in particular on the money side, he puts into all of our customers and advises and consults with many of our other clients. They can't make strategic moves until they hit a certain money number. And that money number isn't necessarily revenue. It can be money in the bank. It can be profitability for you to be able to safely make the next move. And he has seen when companies have grown too quickly, they've got the revenue coming in, but they haven't managed the money to make that step. And that's why money is so important. We then move along to look at people, and people within that element is, we use another analogy about the seats on the bus. And so we decide on the bus, what seats do you need? So you need sales, you need marketing, accounting, social media, whatever, production, manufacturing, HR, you need all of those different seats. And it's about going, have you got the right people in the right seats? And actually, have you got all the seats covered? And you could cover those seats internally, or you can outsource, you know, you can outsource to others. And, you know, you're driving the bus. So when you're driving the bus, you want everybody sat still, so there's no accidents, but they're in the right seats. And that's why people are so important. But too many people just sort of look at their business and go, well, who do we need now? Whereas most of our clients we work with, and our philosophy internally as well, is we look at our bus and we go, okay, we've got 2 or 3 people covering 1 or 2 seats at the moment. That's fine. But we know that seat really is vacant. But when the time is right, we then fill that seat next before any other. So that's where people come in. Leadership, obviously, for growing a business, leadership is so important. And we use DISC as a profiling tool. It's a well-known profiling tool, and it's probably the one we found actually matches us the best. And we use that to look at what our leadership styles are, and also as both us and the team, so everybody understands people's different personality traits. Just because I'm an extrovert and I'm out there going, come on, everyone, we're going this way, it doesn't mean that everybody will follow me if I go in that sort of gung-ho way. It's also about, some people want it, it's going to be okay, we're going in this way, but don't worry, we'll have a few stops on the way, because people learn in different ways. And it probably comes from my sports psychology background, is understanding how people work. And that's why leadership is so, so important. So leadership is there, not just leading the company, but being a leader in yourself, but creating other leaders within that business to grow. And then most of all, and again, this is something I really hope that your listeners can really relate to, is energy. You can get so much done with energy. So energy is about your delivery. It's about your passion for what you do. I mean, as a business owner on that journey, there are highs and lows, but it's the passion and the energy that drives you to the next stage. And people talk about a bit of luck occasionally. Okay, but you make your own luck. And I think energy is probably one of the biggest, probably batteries to growing a business. You plug your battery in and off you go. And it's energy, because if you're energetic, and we see that with lots of business leaders, lots of people will follow energetic business leaders because they go, wow, this man or this woman, this guy, this woman, whatever, they've got great energy. Wow, yeah, I'm listening to them. I'm engaged. I want to do what they want to do. And that's where energy comes in. So those 6 key things, doesn't matter what business you are, but particularly though for C-suite, is just think about those 6 pillars. Have you got an operating system that matches that or is similar to that? And I'm not saying ours is for everybody, but if you've got elements that do match that, start to make it, but understand what is your model? What's your model to grow your business? And yes, if you can take something out of ours, great, but really understand your own model.
I love that insight. Now, let me ask you, with those pillars, okay, simple pillars, do you find that it's dependent upon also where their revenue and where they should focus in regards to the simple principles?
Revenue to a point, and it's about, again, I suppose it's on that information one. When you're trying to fly the plane upwards, it's about, you're looking at your instruments, and it's about, well, revenue has to do it, but it has to be the right revenue to grow the company. So many people, when they start a company, they take revenue from anywhere. And we've all been in that situation. If we've started a business, we just go yes, because we want the money, we want the cash flow. But as you're in that growth element, you can be far choosier on your revenue streams. And actually, you can start to whittle down your offering based on the revenue. And it's not just the revenue, it's obviously the profitability of that revenue, and how you can put some, and I know you mentioned added value earlier. It's about what is the added value that has the extra revenue attached to it as well. And I think as a growing company, when we look at Simple, each and every single moment of those 6 pillars, revenue influences it. Revenue obviously is influenced in the sales, but your information will tell you where you are with your revenue. Then your other steps then about, managing that money can only come from revenue. So for me, yes, it does, but it's not the be end and end all of revenue. Simple is much more about business growth than just the revenue.
So let me ask you, and to pivot a little bit further. So when we're talking revenue, though, are there certain parts like, okay, hey, if you're below 7 figures, you should focus on these 3 pillars of the principles. And then, hey, when you are at 7 figures and scaling to 3-5 million, then you should focus on these 3 pillars. That's, I was just curious, is it kind of like, hey, I should focus on these first, because that's a lot of principles, or is it throughout, no matter what, that should be the foundation throughout your scale?
To me, it's the foundation. It's the foundation of a growing company. It doesn't matter if you're scaling up or you're selling up. That is the foundation. And we have, we've had a couple of clients sell out for multi-million-pound deals, and in that final year of them getting ready for sale, we adopted the whole Simple model in there, and that helped it to be efficient. And actually, you were able to show every single number for a potential buyer and say, this is our model. Doesn't matter they were a company that was 15 years old and they've been using it only for a year. For an external investor was going, wow, okay, multi-million-pound company, this is what you're turning over, and that's your business model. So it's predominantly use Simple across the board for growing, for startups to a point, but it's really scale ups and sell ups is where you would use that model.
Now, in these principles, which principle would you find that most business owners, and I know it probably depends upon industry, but which business owners struggle with the most? Is it like the money? Is it the people? Is it the leadership? Is it like the information? I'd love to get your response on that, what you've seen so far.
Yeah, I mean, definitely money. Money is definitely one of them. And that can be twofold. It can be a business owner has gone to a level they're comfortable at, and they're like, no, we're okay here, we're comfortable. So therefore the business starts to stagnate. It can also be the money area where, as I was saying about salesmen running businesses, they just grow, all the money's coming in and they invest it in the wrong things, and they make the mistakes there in the money, and that stalls the whole thing. But I do think, and particularly you see it when people are staging up and that they have in their mind going, okay, so we're going to hit 5 million, 10 million, 15 million. As they go through that stage, the one thing that many of them fail to recognize is as that business grows, the people and the leadership within Simple probably are the two big focus points. A proper leader will recognize when they've taken the business so far and they need someone else, either internally or externally, to take it to the next level. And that's where we see the problems arise again with a business stagnating, is the leadership in terms of them leading. They either take their foot off the pedal, and people are going, we're not really going anywhere. So all the staff are like, yeah, we're just trotting along, and they follow the same action and go, the company owner's not interested anymore. They sort of lost the thing, and they're off playing golf, or they're buying a yacht or doing whatever. Or the other side is they don't get, working with somebody like yourself, they haven't got an external coach to go, actually, you built a great business. Why don't you get somebody in to come and run it now who can take it to the next level? So for me, the people and the leadership one that's a huge one.
Now, could you give us kind of like an example of maybe one of your clients that you've worked with? And I think you were kind of mentioning this a little bit, but maybe unpack that a little bit, give us a little bit more detail on that structure. What did that trajectory look like? Because like you said, maybe they were doing something for 15 years, they got a good business, but they didn't implement these simple principles, which of course, what does that look like implementing that? And then as well as just like the result of implementing that. If you could just share maybe a client of yours.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. I've got a really good client we could look at. So a client we've been working with for 6 years, family run business, was moving forward, again, in the engineering sector. And when we came in, they were turning over good numbers. And in terms of good numbers, they were turning over 27 million pounds, which must be, I think, something like $38 million. So in terms of that, good business, solid business, but they'd stagnated for 3 or 4 years. They were just plateauing out and leveling. So when we came in and we started to implement Simple, the one thing we put in was information. So we said, okay, so how are you judging your company? They got no management information. We were like, okay, so we got some accounting data, of course, we could see what money was coming in and what money was going out and what they were paying staff. But in terms of, okay, so how did you do from last month to this month? Well, we sort of did okay. And I'm like, so what are you making that on? So when we started to look at information, you'd have been flying a plane blind. You really would have been. And it would have been not only blind with no instruments, the light smears were being off and you were flying in the fog. So for us, then it was going, right, okay, let's strip it right back. Let's come up with 5 or 6 key measurements that we need. So we started to look at sales, and this was really interesting. The sales team had been there a while, and they were quite happy. And they weren't salespeople; they were order takers, because they got a really good establishment, and they were just order takers. They got great customers. They'd just ring up and say, "Do you want to buy some of this? Yeah, let's have a few more." And I'm like, "Okay, you're order takers." That went down really well. So when we put in the measurement, then was, okay, how many sales calls have we made in the last month? And when we went through all the sales calls, they were all just customer calls. I was like, no, that's not sales. And so we started to look in terms of the whole information. It's like, okay, so what is your profitability properly? What is your cost of sale? What's your cost of the product? Where do you want to take this business? And they hadn't done anything in terms of growth for 5 years. They'd grown about 4 or 5%, but they actually got no growth figures. So we went really ambitious and said, okay, come on, then we're going to grow by 40%. They were like, that's not achievable. It's not going to happen. Now we went, why is it not going to happen? Give us the evidence that you can show on that one. So we put in the sales structure, so sales, we put in the information in terms of the whole dashboard. We started to look at the money, and they were sat on a pot of money. And we're like, why are you sat on the money? What are you doing with the money? How can you do other things? And we started to work with the senior directors to go, why don't you invest that in either the business or something else? So they actually started to then acquire 1 or 2 smaller businesses, and they'd never thought of that before. So they just sat on a stack of money. So within that process, then we started to look at the people. So within the process, we had to look at the operations, and they got in a new operations director who could actually then look at going, okay, we now need the right people doing the right things because they've been doing the same thing for 5 or 8 years. And then we started to look at the leadership. So they brought in a new CEO. The CEO they brought in was going to be for 2 years to see if they were an interim CEO to come on in to take the business forward. Ultimately, that CEO actually stayed and started to get an equity stake because they enjoyed what the journey was. And then by bringing in the CEO, it started to change the leadership, and actually the company, not just individuals, had new energy. So it had new energy within the business. The salespeople actually started to change, going, do you know what? Actually, this is really great. We've missed being salespeople, when actually they were quite happy being order takers. But actually they went, do you know what? We missed out on the sales. Look, we're starting to steal business from our competitors. So within that time, we hit 37% in that growth in that first year by adopting the model, when they said that's just never going to happen. And that was purely by bringing in Simple as the method, which everybody got on board. Everybody could understand it, from the owners all the way through to everybody in the staff. This is how we run our business. It's on 6 principles. How does it work? And so for us, that is one of the success stories. We've got others, but that's by adopting Simple to say, that's what it is. That's how it works. Follow it. But not only follow it, you need to know the mechanics under each of them. And that's why I've spoken many times about, in information, you need that company dashboard, because that is actually your temperature check every single month to where you are.
This is such incredible insight, and I really appreciate you kind of reviewing this. And I just love you were able to take the insight of this and really unpack that. Now, let me ask you this, Phil, and I just really appreciate just the immense value that you brought today. Talking about, the simple strategy, obviously your client success and where it's able to scale. Phil, how can our audience reach out to you, be part of your community, what you got going on, man?
Yeah, no, that they can, and I'm really excited, Christian, because sharing this today, we've got some real great stuff going on at the moment. So we've got our businesses. So we've got Business Plus Group. People can find it through Business Plus Group. They can find me on LinkedIn as well, but also as well, where we're developing our business, and it's allowing me to follow my passion, is I'm doing a lot of more one-to-one sales growth work with customers and individuals now, particularly at that C-suite. And so we've got a new website that's just launched, which is phil-coley.com. People can find me there. They can find me on LinkedIn as well. And particularly for some of your listeners, particularly for your US listeners, they might go, you're a sales guy and you've got a domain that's got a hyphen in it. And the reason I'm going to say that is, in the US, you've got a famous country and Western singer called Phil Coley, and he's got the domain name I really, really want, but I can't buy it. So that's why it's got to have a hyphen. So yeah, you can find me at phil-coley.com, not philcoley.com. But if you go to philcoley.com, amazing country and Western singer.
Awesome. And those links will be in the description below, guys. And, again, Phil, I just appreciate that. And I would recommend my audience just stop what they're doing and really just reach out to Phil here, because obviously he has immense experience, not only taking from business owners, that are, million, 2 million, to helping them scale to several millions upon millions, helping produce incredible hundreds of millions of dollars throughout his career, but just has this immense common sense knowledge to be able to look at your business, identify the measurement and the KPIs that need to really be focused on, and really helping you take it to the next level. And Phil, before I let you go, is there any last words of wisdom that you'd like to share with our audience?
Do you know what I would really, Christian? Now, I'm from the UK, but I'm really lucky that I live in France, but I run my UK business in France. And that's because I've got European clients now, as well as clients around the world. The one thing that I want to do is, and again, I relate it to some of my great contacts in the US, is in the US, salespeople are seen as salespeople. They're seen as professionals. They've got huge respect. The passion that I have in the UK is I really want sales in the UK to be seen in the same light. And it's really disappointing in the UK, and I'm on this sort of mission, is in the UK, you can't find a university that has a sales degree. There isn't. There's marketing degrees, and that's great, because sales in the UK is still seen as a bit of a dirty word. And for me, I'm on that crusade that, you know what? A business is not a business if you haven't got good salespeople. So salespeople are hugely, hugely important. So that's my kind of wisdom, that is, somebody's listening to this and they're thinking about getting into sales, or they're running a big business and they're thinking about salespeople. Your salespeople are one of the most important investments you will ever make in your business, far more than any machine you'll ever buy. Is get the right salespeople, invest in them, even if they've been a great salesperson, still invest in them, because we never stop learning. I never stop learning. And in this digital world, I love learning more and more about sales and chatting to more and more salespeople. But sales is a proper profession wherever you are in the world. Just appreciate it for what it is. It's an amazing thing.
I love that. And that is my friend, Phil Coley. Guys, that is Journey with Christian D. Evans podcast. Until next time, remember, be uncommon if you can. Yo, this is Christian D. Evans, Journey with Christian D. Evans podcast. We thank you so much for listening to this amazing episode. If you feel and you know that this was valuable to you, please show some love to our amazing guest by liking this, by commenting on this, by making sure that you do a nice 5-star review, and just show some love to our guest. That'd be really awesome. Also, make sure you share this with a friend, a family, a colleague, someone that you believe would bring value to their life right now. And guys, we just want to say thank you again for just being part of our community. If you want to have more resources, don't be afraid. Go to christiandevans.com. You can actually schedule a phone call with me, or you can send me an email at christian.evans@beUncommonIfYouCan.com. That's christian.evans@beUncommonIfYouCan.com. Always love to hear some feedback, and let me know what is the number 1 or 2 things that you are struggling in your business and your life, and we'll make sure we have those conversations. Guys, that is Journey with Christian D. Evans podcast, and until next time, remember, be uncommon if you can. Cheers.